So this is the Public Awareness Personnel and Policy Committee meeting, February 1st, 2021, 10 a.m., calling it to order. Nice to see everyone. Thank you for coming. Before we begin the items for discussion, I have 2 points of personal privilege. Number one, I would like to recognize the folks on this call that were responsible for submitting the videos for the CASA conference entry, the Award for Excellence in Innovation and Resiliency. Vallecitos, and it was for the water at the Mar Reservoir. Can someone mute Ingrid's?
She's now muted. Yeah.
That video was terrific. I was at the conference and I saw it. So congratulations on winning that award. There were 2 other submissions by Vallecitos. One was for public outreach for the work we do. The second one was for outstanding capital project for the Rock Springs Sewer Replacement Project. So congratulations for submitting those and for the winning entry. Terrific job. So I wanted to recognize that publicly. The second, I have a question about recording of the committee meetings. It looks like some are recorded and some are not. I am happy to have this committee meeting recorded, but I'm just wondering, on our website, it says that the committee meetings aren't recorded. So I'm just wondering, are they going to typically be recorded going forward, or is it just this committee, or how is that going to work?
So they are recorded. So in a pre-COVID world, we just did an audio recording of the committees, and we did the full audio and video for the board meetings. But in the COVID world, when we've been doing these Zoom meetings, they're all recorded, both video and audio. So sometimes, so I think we're working on correcting the language on the website to reflect that they are recorded. And sometimes there's a lag between when the meetings are conducted and when they're placed on the website. We use a third-party consultant to do the processing for the videos. So they don't always get on the website as quickly as we'd like, and we're working on that as well. But they are recorded.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, all right, I think we can move into our agenda. Still no attendees?
Still no attendees.
Okay, all right. So I think what looks like is first up is personnel.
Yeah, so Director Boyd Hodgson, you had asked to have our 2 representatives for our Employees Association join us so you can put a face to the names. So we have in the, I don't know if it's your upper left corner, but we have Dean Toth here. He's a pump and motor tech 2 in our operations and maintenance group. And we have Ingrid Stichter. And Ingrid, can you turn your camera on? Where did she go? There she is. So Ingrid's an engineering tech 2 in our development services group. So, and those 2 are the, not respectively, but Ingrid's the president, I believe, and Dean's the vice president?
Correct.
Okay, of the association. So those are the faces with the names. So if you wanted to introduce yourselves or say anything quick, Ingrid, why don't we start with you? Maybe just how long you've been here and how long you've been on the association.
And my video keeps going off. I don't know why, just FYI.
Okay.
I've been with the district since 2012 and president of the association, actually been alternating with Dean. I want to say at least 6 years.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, between president and vice president, we've kind of been switching roles every couple of years. So
clearly a highly sought after position. It's 2 people trading it back and forth. So. Dean?
I think Ingrid's out. I'm Dean Toth. Like Glenn said, I'm a pump and motor technician. I started here in the construction department in 2007. So I've been here a bit, and like Ingrid said, I've been very involved in the district. I think I've been involved in every negotiation since I've been here. Kind of got my feet wet right away, and I've enjoyed every minute of being here.
All right. So for the director's benefit, when we go through negotiations, the president and vice president will be kind of the primary points of contact for staff to work with. For when I say staff, usually me as the kind of a designated representative for the district. So, and they've been very great to work with. So good representatives.
Thank you.
oh, shucks.
Well, thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and introduce yourself. I had just requested to put a name with a face, and we appreciate your service and your willingness to come and speak to us. I know that the idea is that you aren't going to be on the meeting for very long so that you don't have to take too much time out of your day, but I really appreciate you making the time. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Nice to meet you as well.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think with that, Ingrid and Dean, you can go off and do more valuable things for us.
All right.
All
Nice
right.
meeting you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Goodbye.
Bye.
Welcome. Thank you.
All right, we ready to move on to the next item? Okay, so the next one is an update on the recruitment for the development services engineer. At the last board meeting, you heard we had an item about bringing back one of our retired people to help us out. And it was primarily because her former supervisor, Rob, left and went to Vista Irrigation. So we're in the process of trying to fill Rob's position. So James is with us today, and he's going to give you a little update on where we're at in the status of recruiting for Rob's position.
Thank you. In recruiting for Rob's position, we're looking at the job description currently. So like you typically do when you, Rob's been with us or was with us for over 14 years, and I've known Rob for over 16 years. As Rob moved up and got promoted here at Vallecitos Water District, we kind of ended up giving him more responsibilities as he had more capabilities, and the job description over time got kind of molded around his personal abilities and expertise. Unfortunately, that doesn't really match well what a lot of other development services group supervisors at cities and other water districts do. Rob was primarily a planning engineer, and planning engineers are kind of a different breed. To say they're in some ways your stereotypical engineers, and I say that with esteem and a joke too. So for those of you who know engineers, also what happens is that type of skill set usually is not held by most engineers that work at other agencies that do development service work. So at this point, we're looking at the job descriptions. We're looking at rewriting those to kind of match it's a lot of the other agencies better to help increase the amount of recruits. So, and I know both our human resources and Rondi's here from my admin manager, if they could add more to that or correct anything that I may have gotten wrong.
So I would add, typically we wouldn't bring recruitment updates to a committee. The reason we're doing that is because obviously you got a little bit of an introduction to the issue at the last board meeting. And if we kind of rescope the position for recruitment purposes, we may need to go to the board to get a new position created. We can't recruit for a position that doesn't exist. So we wanted to give you a little insight as to where we think we're heading. And if things change, you may see something coming up on a board meeting that talks about a new position being created. We haven't fully decided which way we're going yet, but we just wanted to keep the committee kind of apprised of where we're heading.
Yes, and the good news is if we do move this way, it appears, and I haven't gotten confirmation of this, that from a budgetary standpoint, that the new position would be a little bit less as far as from a total pay.
Yeah, so that's the good news. The bad news is that the lower paid position wouldn't be able to do all the things that Rob did, and we'd probably have to augment with outside resources, get consultants to help us with things that Rob used to be able to help us with internally. But so that's kind of the fork in the road we find ourselves in. If we could find a complete replacement for Rob, that would be great. If we can't, we'll probably downgrade the position, go to kind of less responsibilities and augment it with consultant services. So anything else? HR, is there anything you wanted to add from Rondi or Bridget's perspective? No? Okay.
So I have some questions about the process. Is it typical that you sort of look locally or regionally first, and then do we have the capability to expand it, like widen the net or widen the circle that we're looking at? How does that work?
Yeah, I'll let Bridget address that, the actual recruitment net that we cast.
Good morning, everybody. So all of our positions are automatically advertised locally. We send them out to all other cities and water districts, as well as posted on our website. There are a couple industry websites that are always used, Water District Jobs and BC Water Jobs. And so they're almost always posted there. If it's a hard to recruit position, for example, we did this for IT and for a previous engineer position, we'll usually branch out through other California professional organizations, like the California Professional Society of Engineers, I think is what it is. But it really kind of depends on how difficult the recruitment is if we branch out further than San Diego.
Okay, that's all we had for that item, just a real brief update on where we're heading. So unless there's any other questions, we can probably move on to the next item.
What's sort of the cutoff for making a decision of whether or not you're going to try to fill it with a person that doesn't do all of the things that Rob could do and then bring in the consultants, or keep pushing forward to try to find somebody that matches exactly?
Rick Board Hodgins, I could probably address that question. So ideally, if and it may not be fully my decision, but ideally I like to advertise it both ways to see what we get. And if we get somebody from the industry, especially with advertising as some of the industry advertisements for newsletters, we get people from other states too. If we find somebody that could kind of match all the qualifications, then that would be the best for Vallecitos and the best for my department personally. But if we can't, the reason why we're even entertaining basically redoing the job description is because then I know we could get people that fit the new job description that will handle, the majority of the workload that's needed for the development process.
Yeah, and it's a question of timing too. We'd like to do these things at the same time, do a parallel process, because if we tried to find a perfect replacement for Rob and only that approach, and if that didn't pan out, we would lose months before we had to go back and then reclassify the position and do a recruitment for a kind of a lower level position. So it may end up being 6 months before we get somebody in the seat. So that's part of the issue we deal with too. There's kind of the complexity versus the timeliness. So, and like James said, the specific skill set that Rob had was fairly unique in the area, at least. Any other questions on that one? Okay. So the next item on the agenda is an update on inclusive language. Add pronoun option. So we have Rondi and Bridget here, but maybe Director Boyd Hodgson, if you can tell us specifically what you're looking for, and then we can maybe respond.
Sure. So I think, and I reached out to a couple of people that I consider advisors that are, experts in the area as well. I reached out to the person who leads Trans Family Services in North County, as well as the North County LGBTQ Resource Center, as well as a friend of mine who is an Indigenous activist. And, me raising the question is an attempt to make sure that we are being inclusive and trying to show people that we are a place for people that may not fit within the binary constructs of gender, that we want them to feel included as an applicant. And so, and it's also the case that I think that there are some laws around this that we also need to double check that we're in compliance with. So that's really the reasons why I raised it. I didn't really have sort of I wasn't saying, I have something in mind here, can you try to figure that out and come around to meet it? I was just throwing it out there as, how can we ensure that we are including people when we are, when they're filling out an application. So I received a couple of suggestions, but I'm not wed to any of them, but I just want to make sure that we are trying to accomplish that goal. So let's discuss it.
Yeah, maybe I can ask Bridget to explain where gender is even referenced in any of our recruitment or application procedures. So that's a good place to start. And before Bridget jumps in, I would say one of the things that we first, from a staff level, we want to make sure we're in full compliance with all federal, state, and local laws. That's where we start. That doesn't mean that's as far as you go, but that's the minimum that you go, right? So we're always making sure we're in compliance with the laws. And part of being inclusive is making sure you're not being exclusive. So I don't think we do anything in any of our process to exclude any particular group. And most of our recruitments are pretty generic. We're not advertising in any specific trade magazine or publication that's geared towards any particular gender affiliation. So I think we do a good job of not being exclusive. So I'm curious to see what thoughts you may have to make us more inclusive. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bridget, and you can explain where we do reference gender in the recruitment process.
It's actually only in one place. So on the application itself, we do have a voluntary demographic form. We have, we ask gender, male, female, or decline to state, and then ethnicity. And all of those choices are coming directly from the federal government. We only use this report for reporting required information demographics to the federal government on a biannual basis. So beyond that, we save it in case there's ever a problem or question, but it's not shared with anyone else in the recruitment process outside of me as the person who sorts the applications, and they're separated from applications before they go out to anybody else.
And Bridget, can you expand when you say before they go out to anybody else? Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So when applications come in, I do the initial screening and I'll check for minimum qualifications, things like that, then send the application on to the supervisor for further review.
Okay, so that supervisor never sees the gender identity. And I see Rondi just can't wait to speak. She keeps raising her hand there, so yeah.
I just wanted to add, I forgot to prep Bridget on this one, sorry, Bridget, that when she sends the applications out to the departments for review, they are blind, meaning she removes any identifiers like name, address. What else, Bridget? Help me remember. What are the other things that you take off?
Those are kind of the only, name, address, school.
Age?
Age we don't ask.
Okay, don't ask at all, okay.
So, and then I'll remove like colleges, the name of, anything like that.
Yeah, so we're trying to make the process as blind to things that may be used to include or exclude a particular group as possible.
Okay, I appreciate hearing that context, and I think it really speaks well to Vallecitos' efforts to make things fair and like General Manager Pruitt said, remove any potential for exclusion. So for the application, my understanding is that we have you have male and female and decline to state.
Yes.
And you ask about gender or you ask about sex?
I believe it is listed as gender.
Okay. I think under gender, what we might also include is the word non-binary for folks that don't feel like they fit in either category. And I think that complies with the law as well.
That can be concluded as far as asking and inclusivity. When it comes to the reporting, which is at this point the only thing that is used for, federal government unfortunately only has those two choices.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would have to do a visual assessment of anyone who declined to state or stated they were non-binary. Hopefully, by the time we have to do something, our current administration will have changed things and we can use that a little bit more. But right now, there's only the two choices on that report.
Okay. Well, I think it would. I think adding that category under gender would help someone if they're filling out the application feel seen if they are in that category. And it's not really it's not really a lot of effort. You know, it just gives them another option.
Would you recommend, or did any of your contacts recommend including one for sex as well?
They did. So the recommendation that I got under sex, and I wasn't sure if sex was included on the application, but I asked. The recommendation for sex was male, female, intersex, and declined to state, which I'm fine including, but I'm not sure, what the parameters are around asking for sex and gender, which we could ask both. They're medically recognized as different sort of continua and categories. And under gender, the recommendation was male, female, non-binary, trans male, and trans female. I had some, I had some concerns about someone identifying themselves as trans male and trans female, in case perhaps they just want to be considered male and female rather than trans male and trans female. But I'm happy to continue that discussion. I don't know that we have to decide it all today, but I'm happy to continue the discussion. And again, the purpose of me raising this is to not make busy work for people. It's to help folks that are applying feel seen and recognized and included. And I think that these small things that we could do could really promote that and help Vallecitos be recognized as an inclusive and preferred place to work.
Bridget, can you clarify for me? So you said it's a voluntary information we're requesting from applicants, correct?
Correct.
So if they choose not to provide it, that doesn't affect the status of their application one way or the other?
No.
What is our federal reporting requirement when people don't provide that information?
We actually only have to provide it for active employees. So it's not information that we have to keep for applicants. It's good information to have behind the scenes, but we then will use the report. They use the form they filled out on their application once hired. And that's what we input into the system.
So for example, if some applicant sued the district and said, we don't think you're whatever complying with laws, or we would have those as a record to say, well, these are the people that have applied for these positions in the past, and we can make an informed decision. So we do keep some data for every recruitment that we do.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So I'll work with HR and we'll try to figure out, we'll differentiate between the sex and the gender and talk about the addition of some additional choices or options for applicants. And then obviously, above all, make sure that we're compliant with the law. So, okay. Director Pennick, any thoughts on that, or are you ready to move on to the next item?
No, I'm ready to move on.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Director Boyd Hodgson, were you done with that item then?
So, I don't know if we routinely ask about pronouns, but if someone identifies their own pronouns, then that would save you from having to do a visual assessment and making that judgment. So I'll throw that out there as well. If we go with the option of, having a non-binary, which doesn't comply with, the federal reporting requirements just yet, they don't have that category. And Bridget, you mentioned, well, then we have to do a visual assessment. That takes a little bit of subjective pressure off of you to, and also, you don't have to do that work. So if somebody, if we had an option for what are your pronouns, she, her, hers, he, him, his, or they, theirs, then that sort of takes care of that situation as well. And I think it's, I think it's very little effort to go a long way for folks to be seen. And it also might even, promote some efficiency if we are adding a category that is not yet federally recognized. So that's what I meant by adding the pronoun option. And I think that's it. And we can continue talking about it.
Yeah. So from a timeline, maybe next month we can give you a status update on the content of our conversation.
Thank you. I really appreciate your doing the work. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to think if, out of respect to Bridget's time, is that the last item you were going to be here for, Bridget?
I think, no, it's not.
Okay. Oh yeah, the training. I'm sorry. All right, so next item is closed captioning of meetings. So I'll turn that over to you, Director Boyd Hodgson. We don't close caption meetings right now, so you know that already, but what was your thought on this item?
I wonder if there's just a button that we can click so that the captions can be automatically generated when we're speaking in Zoom or whatever platform we're using to stream. That way we wouldn't, I mean, ideally, if we are having a recorded session like this one, so that folks can feel included, there would be an ASL interpreter, but that takes a lot of effort to book and to bring in, and it's money that hasn't been budgeted. So that's a topic for another day. But with a lot of platforms, closed captions can be auto-generated, and they're not perfect, but they're better than nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there's a way that we could find out if the streaming feature, whether, and I'm not exactly sure how many avenues we use to broadcast this, whether it's on YouTube or whether we're using something called StreamYard or something like that. But we could generate closed captions automatically and at least provide a little bit of a stopgap for the folks that may want to watch that are hearing impaired.
So Chris Robbins is on with us, and Chris, I don't know if you have any thoughts on what capabilities platforms like Zoom and Teams have, or for our videos that we get recorded and put on the website, what issues may be associated with adding closed captioning.
So I asked Lisa on Friday to do a little research on this, and there are some applications, I believe, Rev, R-E-V, Verbit, VERBIT, Total Caption. There's different companies that will provide it through Zoom. I think it's an add-on. I don't think it's, some of the information she received seemed to indicate it really wasn't necessarily too expensive. But I think some of the concern would be that I think their accuracy rate may be less than 80% or so. It depends on how well people enunciate and things like that, like it's auto-generated. There are other ones where there's like a person that you can basically hire to basically kind of type along with people, and that gets to be pricey because you're paying a consultant to type it in. So those are some options, and we can come back next month with some prices for those and maybe some of the accuracy rates. Lisa did point out, and I think it was a good point out, that in this industry we use a lot of acronyms, and those things may get crunched up from time to time as people use them. But we can come back with some figures next month and provide an update. I think that's pretty reasonable. And then secondly, there may be things that can be done on YouTube as well, but that's kind of a separate issue. And I wasn't quite sure whether we were trying to do it live or did we want it on the archived YouTube meetings or what?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'd be really concerned about the accuracy. So we could perceive it as something's better than nothing, but sometimes something could be much worse than nothing, because if it gives the wrong message, if it gets interpreted incorrectly, it could give a 180-degree different perspective of what we were trying to convey. For example, they may drop a word where we said this will not increase water rates, and it may say this will increase water rates, because it didn't pick things up clearly. So we have to be very careful that the accuracy is there, and then we have to have someone monitor to make sure that there wasn't a incorrect information that was given out there. I like the idea, and I like to think the technology will get there where it's more and more accurate as time goes on, but I'm just concerned that some misinformation may be distributed if we don't get the right program.
Yeah, agreed. I think that that's a great point. I think that, something having such a catastrophic effect is probably not something that would happen often, but, maybe we could even pilot a couple of these and see how it goes. And try it and see if the auto captioning is not working well, then we can, try something else. But, these are probably add-ons that you pay by month, or maybe a 6-month trial. maybe we could consider something like that. I think, you know, I do know what the cost is to hire an ASL interpreter. Those folks do a great job. But it's also the case that it requires administrative support to get the person in place and to make them, you know, connect them in. When I was campaigning, I held an advisory board for folks that are hearing impaired, and it was you know, I went through the process of getting an ASL interpreter, and you know, there were a lot of people that I think would be interested to know what we do, but it's just not accessible to them. And you know, the idea of you know, having it auto captioned for the recording, that's an interesting idea too. It isn't perfect because that means that folks that are hearing impaired wouldn't necessarily be, you know, the live meetings wouldn't be accessible to them. They would have to wait for the video. But again, that might be better than not doing anything right now to include them. So I think there are a lot of options here, and we can, you know, let's keep talking about it. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I like the concept of a pilot program, particularly if we could do it like a live streaming, but during the pilot, it doesn't go out to the public. Maybe just behind the scenes, we could be capturing it to see what would it have looked like if it had gone out to the public. We can work with our IT group and our communications group, and they can figure out whether it's accurately capturing the information that's presented at the meetings. So I'll work with Chris on that. All right, anything more on the closed captioning?
Just one quick question. Has anybody ever requested it from the general public? I mean, have we had any complaints or questions as to, is this available?
None that I'm aware of. Chris, I don't know if you've ever heard?
No.
No, okay. And you know, the other part of that is our viewership is pretty low. We can work with IT to get better numbers to understand how many people are actually watching our meetings. I don't know if it's easier or more difficult in the Zoom environment. I can see the number of attendees. You know, I can count them, and today it's 0. But during board meetings, that number varies. But we don't ever capture it, right? At the end of the meeting, we don't say, "Here's the 7 attendees that were at the meeting." And when people download, so right now we don't live stream. Well, pre-COVID, we didn't live stream our video. So people had to watch it after the fact by downloading it off our YouTube channel. And I believe in that forum, or that format, it was easy to get a count. You can see how many people accessed it. But we don't have a lot of good metrics right now on how many people are actually viewing. And the reason I bring that up is because several of our other board members are big on return on investment. So if we spend a lot, if we're going down a path that spends a lot of money, to what benefit are we receiving? There's no magic number out there. These are the questions they'll be asking. Well, how many people have asked for it? How many people even watch the meetings? But just so the both of you know kind of the history of the types of questions we get at the board level.
Agreed. I think that's a good question. You know, I'm also keeping in mind President Pinellas' desire to elevate Vallecitos. And, you know, if we, you know, as part of this committee, the public awareness portion of this committee is elevating Vallecitos. So, you know, if we make it as easy as possible for folks to attend, then maybe they will. Maybe they won't, but maybe they will. So, you know, I think it's worth continuing to discuss. And, you know, it's a chicken and egg problem. Maybe no one has requested it because they know that it's not available. And, you know, why would just a single request make so much of a difference? But maybe if we had it and we piloted it, maybe we would get a few people, folks that, you know, we hadn't had before.
Well, I'll work with Chris. We'll come up with some concept for a pilot, and then we'll come back and report. Not sure if we can do it by next month, but we'll try for the March 1st P3 committee meeting. All right, we ready for the next item? Okay, next item is workplace safety training, and this is probably the item that Bridget hung around for. So Director Boyd Hodgson, I believe you raised this at the last meeting. Would it be helpful if Bridget explained what training we do require right now? Okay, Bridget, can you maybe run through the current employee required training and board member required training for that matter?
From the HR standpoint, sexual harassment training, sexual harassment prevention training is required every 2 years. Managers, supervisors, and board members have a 2-year or 2-hour training that they have to have. And then all regular employees have to go through it for an hour. We are actually due this year, so you guys will all be getting that from me in the next few months. So look forward to that. Beyond that, we did get a spreadsheet from our safety department. Glenn, can I show people?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the annual training schedule that was provided by our safety department. You can see here, these are all the different groups that have to take the training, the course, what actual standard and rule requires it, and then how often we do it when it was last done. So they have a spreadsheet on this for all of our trainings as required. I don't know if you would like us to go through each one, or if just want to see
No,
it.
I don't think you have to go through each one.
I think it's clear we do a lot of training.
Yes.
Yeah, no, this is really helpful. I appreciate you putting this together and sharing it. Could you just scroll up?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. You don't have to show it again. The one for emergency preparedness that I noticed all staff has to train. That includes board directors as well, right?
I don't know that we've ever included the board in the emergency preparedness.
Okay. So specifically, I'm thinking about, prevention of workplace violence, or in the event, I mentioned this last time, in the event that there is some kind of event on site that could be a violent situation. So where does that fall in that training? Because I didn't read the whole spreadsheet. It's really comprehensive and I appreciate it. But where does that fall?
Director Boyd Hudson, are you thinking more like at a board meeting when we're back to an in-person board meeting, or not necessarily?
Yeah, well, yes. Or, just in the daily operations when everyone is back in the office.
Okay. Bridget?
So right now it is done as part of the emergency preparedness and business plan that we have to do every year.
Okay, thank you.
And I know some agencies take on special training for like board meeting settings, like what to do if somebody a disgruntled customer came in threatening a board member. So there's probably some training that we could do there too, to inform the board members, what should you do if somebody came in with a weapon, or just even if they're appearing violent. So we could probably expand it to include that specific format, just a board meeting. Because that's a kind of a unique setting that we have that's very different than our standard workplace stuff.
Okay, sure. I would welcome that.
Bridget, did that list include like ethics training? Because I know the board members and myself and managers have ethics training.
It does not. So the spreadsheet is actually specific to the safety training. And then I would handle sexual harassment prevention training. And I believe the executive secretary assigns ethics training.
Yeah.
I think Chris has his hand up too.
Yes, Chris.
Well, and since we're talking about training, this seems like a good time to bring it up. The district has, through the Special District Leadership Foundation, a couple of awards or statuses. We're a district of distinction. We're also a transparency certificate of excellence. We've achieved that status. And a big part of that status is having board members that are trained. And so there's a fairly extensive list of training for board members to maintain that status. And I think the due date is June 30th of 2021 for us to keep it. And I did get the information from my contact at Special District Leadership Foundation. So I think there's some fairly extensive training. It's more related, not so much to what Bridget was talking about, but more maybe from Diane. But I can pass it along if we want to get that started to maintain that status.
Yeah, I'll work with Chris and Diane, and we'll get a packet of information to all the board members, including our two committee members, of what training you would need some is mandatory and some is required if you want to be continue to be a district of distinction and those types of things. So, but we'll let you know what we would need from you, and then we'll help coordinate all the training.
Great, thank you. Yeah, sooner rather than later. Don't
Yeah.
send it to me. on
7 classes in the last week. You don't want that, huh? Yeah. All right. I'll write myself a note here. Okay, so I think that concludes the personnel portion of the agenda, unless so. Director Boyd Hodgson or Pennick, if you have any other questions in personnel, I think this is where Bridget will jettison
me.
herself from the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bridget.
much. Have a great
Ronnie, you
day.
gonna take off too? Okay. So we'll move on to public awareness, and this will probably be the Chris Robbins show right here. So Chris, why don't you jump in and talk about upcoming events or contests, and you can talk about the item that you and I discussed this morning as well.
Sure enough. One of the things that's actually on our list that is kind of in a pending status, but I just saw Bridget's note the other day. My contact with the San Diego Blood Bank has been reaching out to us to host a blood drive, probably sometime in March. I believe it was at last month's PPP committee meeting that I saw Director Pennock sitting there with a needle in his arm. So excited to get the blood drives going again. Would love, I'm going to say this maybe 3 times. I would love to have a board member come to one of the blood drives and be part of that. That would be a big kick if I could get a board member out to one of those. So that's one of the things.
I'm in.
All right.
We do that as, partly
You
as
got 2 of us.
good community outreach. But we're a good location. We're real easy to get to. Just kind of right off the 78, and it just puts us really as part of a member of the community that our staff are willing to go and donate blood for the community. So I'll keep you posted on that. So some of the other events coming up, I'm not too sure. There may be a future fair coming up. This is where we work with what's called the San Marcos Promise. It's basically an effort to connect with the high schools in the community. And the Future Fair tries to make an effort to reach out to students and give them a planning for careers. And we've staffed their events several different times. They're really kind of a joy. And one of the really good things about the Water District is no matter what career you're looking for, if you want to work out in the field and you want to work with tools, we have a job for you. If you want to work in finance, we have a job for you. If you want to work as an engineer, we have a job for you. If you want to work in customer service, we have a job for you. You want to work in water conservation, we have a job for you. So any one of those students, regardless of what it is they want to do, they can probably get a job with the district, and it's real good for us to outreach to them. I think this one's going to be virtual. I think it's going to be multiple days in March 22 to 26. I don't have enough details yet because I just saw this, but that's a good event for us, and a good General Manager Pruim is on a committee, I believe, with the Water Authority to try and get the next generation of water employees to get on board and get into this business. And this is a real local level version of that. There may be a spring festival on April 11th. This is kind of one of those COVID pending things. If the numbers start to look better, there may be it's hosted by San Marcos Chamber. That's a big deal. It's typically on a Sunday, and we typically give away succulents and things like that. I'd love to be able to do it. It just sort of depends on the COVID status. Hopefully things improve. Contests coming up. We have our youth poster contest. I may as well bring up, we do have 3 winners from last year, and I've been having a lot of difficulty. One of the children moved away, and so I was given their address. That's the only thing I was given, just an address. So I mailed the youth the poster and the awards, but I still haven't heard back from them. I'd like to get them in on like one of these types of Zoom calls so that the board can recognize them, say a few nice words and give them some congratulations. But I still haven't heard from that second place winner. But we're starting up for the next contest, and probably next week in February, I'll be emailing the 4th grade teachers in the district, San Marcos Unified, and give them the PDFs of the forms that the children can fill out. There's a couple, for whatever reason, there's some schools that try harder and teachers that try harder than others, just the way things work. So there's a few good ones out there that will participate with us, so that's good news. And then we also have a landscape contest coming up. This is where we have 3 winners from our community, where we're looking to have them showcase that they've put in low water use landscape. That contest ends in May. There'll be there's a bill message going out in on the utility bill, noting that the contest, and then both those contests, the landscape contest and the poster contest, will be in the winter edition of Between the Pipes that we'll be bringing forward within the next month or so. So those are some of the outreach items that we have and contests that we have going right now.
Do you have, or will you have graphics that you can push out on social media to promote those?
Absolutely.
Tags? Great, great.
Yeah.
I will happily share all of those. The future fair with San Marcos Promise, do you do anything like that with the trade schools or with like Palomar College, or to try to recruit kids that are going into the trades?
Truly, and with Palomar College, it's typically what's the Gear Up is kind of the outreach program through Palomar College. We have done some things with High Tech High in the past. They're sometimes easier to reach and sometimes harder. It all depends on who's the administrator at the time. But other trade schools, I'm not sure which ones you're talking about, so that would be helpful for me.
Okay, let's keep talking about that. I think that there's a tremendous opportunity, sending kids into the trades to get good paying jobs would benefit the whole community. It benefits them, it benefits us, and it's something that I believe very strongly in, and I would be happy to help in any way possible that you need.
Yeah, and Director Boyd Hodgson, I agree with you 100%, and that's been one of our bigger challenges. So Chris mentioned I'm part of this team, countywide team, to try to find where the next generation of employees is going to come from. We crunched some numbers, and countywide, San Diego County, over the next 5 years, we anticipate there'll be upwards of close to 1,000 jobs opening up in the water and wastewater industry. The problem is there's really no good feeder program for a lot of that. So if you look at Vallecitos as a typical water district, about half of our positions are in the field operations group. So that's not necessarily the group that's going to go to the standard 4-year college, get their degree. These are people that want to get into the trades. And one thing you've probably all noticed is the trades are really not well promoted at the younger levels. We've become a culture of you got to go get a 4-year college degree. So those trade schools that used to be so prevalent many years ago are fewer and far between. So it's really hard to find where is that feeder program that will help us replace these retiring or soon to be retiring field workers in particular. So any ideas that the two of you may have to tap into a untapped resource, we'd love to get it, but it's just not an obvious source for us right now.
What I can tell you is really proud of our field staff that will attend with us at these events and their efforts to, recruit people and basically, use the terms to say, hey, not everybody knows what they want to do. They try and do that to you as a youth. What are you going to do? I filled out some form. They told me I was going to be an airline pilot. Never happened. So our staff will go with us to these events, and we'll do a nice job of pointing out, look, you can come start here and then you can move forward. There's ways to move forward. And, most everybody in the industry started somewhere and moved forward, and they make a good case for that. And just I want to point out how very proud I am of our field crews when they come with us to these types of events.
Yeah, so one thing I will add, we are part of the County Water Authority's intern program. So they kind of oversee the program for countywide. Any water agency, water district that wants to be part of that program can do so. And to be part of it, what that means is that you'll host an intern. They have 4 different groups. They'll have like water treatment, water distribution, waste, they'll have 4 different groups you can sign up for. And if an interested person signs up with the Water Authority, then the Water Authority is looking for host families, basically a host agency. And I think it's like an 8-week rotation. So you'll work at one agency for 8 weeks doing a particular thing, and then the music stops and you got to switch chairs and go to maybe a different agency doing a different function. It's been a really great program. The Water Authority has, they tout their success about how many of their interns have received employment, not just locally, but just in the industry as a whole. So we participate in that, and we actually have a few employees here that were an intern for us through the Water Authority program, and we ended up hiring them full time. We've also talked about developing our own intern program. We don't want it to compete with the Water Authority's program, but maybe it's a different demographic. So the Water Authority, they're looking for people that are a little older, high school graduates, maybe in like a community college and trying to pick up some classes, get some certificates in water, wastewater. That's kind of their demographic. But I've been thinking more maybe a younger group, like high school intern program, to start to whet the appetite of kids. And like Chris said, they're at that age where they don't know what they want to do. They may be getting this pressure to go to a 4-year school, but maybe that's not for them, either financially or culturally or whatever the reason might be. And they're looking for exposure to something else. Like Chris mentioned, we have a ton of great jobs here. Nobody knows about it. They may think, oh, water district, I don't want to be a water operator, but they don't know we have all these other jobs. So getting the message out is important, and it's a hard thing to do, but I think there's a lot of areas for us to go to start to encourage people to look at the water district as a good employer of choice.
Just a quick
Absolutely.
question on that.
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, we're in a kind of a military hub here too. I mean, as well as looking at the younger crowd, have we tapped into like retired vets that are 42 years old and retiring from the, Marines or Navy, and then have some really good training? Have we tapped into any VA vets or anything?
Yeah, we have. I've had that conversation with Rondi, and specifically trying to make sure that we're doing outreach to the military groups. Some of the jobs that we have are just tailor-made for people that are getting out of the military. They have the skill set. They may have worked on an aircraft carrier operating water and wastewater systems, and now they got their 20 years in and they're looking for another 10, 15-year career. Mm-hmm. We're a perfect place for that. If they're like a supply sergeant, they're gonna be great in a warehouse here. There's a lot of good jobs and a good connection with the military. So that is on our radar screen. And the Water Authority has a specific pipeline to talk with the military groups as well, because they recognize the same thing, that it's a good potential resource. And like you said, we're in a great place for military retirees.
All right. I mean, I was just at Camp Pendleton yesterday, and yeah. I was talking to these guys. They're 42, 43 years old and retiring, and they don't know what they're going to do. And I'm just going, and they've got this crazy good training, and I'm just going, all right, well, okay.
Yeah, that's a lot of working years still ahead of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a great point. A few months ago, I read an article about how sometimes the barrier moving veterans into industry is that the folks in HR may not have the appropriate training to understand how the experience could be transferable. So is that something that we have experienced in the past, or do we feel comfortable that all the folks that are responsible for looking at the experience of a veteran can, that's something that they're completely facile with and can easily recognize how this person who has this experience would be great in this person, in this job over here?
So I see Rondi turned her camera on. So Rondi is a veteran. She's a Marine. So she comes from that world. And Randy, why don't you share your experience and address Dr. Boyd Hodgson's comment there?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I come from the military. I was in almost 10 years. And we do have, I don't know the exact numbers, but we do have veterans working at Vallecitos. And although we're not set up like an agency that has, a point-based system, preferential hiring for veterans, we absolutely would consider veterans. And the experience isn't always an exact match, but regardless of the position that we're hiring for, we have that, I wouldn't call it a disclaimer, but we have that generic language on all of our job descriptions and our job announcements that says, basically any combination of knowledge, skills, and abilities that would, you would be able to qualify for the position that we're recruiting for. So, we are more than willing to consider military experience.
And one thing, and I don't know the exact impact on military retirement benefits, but that may be a bit of a hurdle. So if they come from a world where they have a federal military pension and they're trying to get into a state or system like we're on CalPERS, they may be looking more towards federal jobs in retirement than they are looking for state, county, and local jobs. So Rondi, can you address that at all?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any conflict in hiring. Like for example, when we try to bring back one of our retirees, they're limited to a certain number of hours that they can work before it impacts their retirement. Because the systems are separate, the federal and the state, we could hire a retired military person, but like you said, chances are their interests are elsewhere because there may be some additional benefits from working for a federal agency rather than local government. Myself, I tried to get a civil service job when I got out too, and it's competitive, and a lot of that, I'm not going to say it on this recording, but a lot of that is about who you know. If you know of a potential opening and you can be at the right place at the right time when you're submitting your application. A lot of it's timing too. It depends on when you're separating, what's going on in the job market. So I would say they tend to go more towards civil service jobs because there's an easier transition and there may be some nexus between benefits that, we're not able to provide for them.
Okay.
Good
Are we
info.
ready to go to
Thank
the
you.
second? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Director.
I'm just saying good info. Thank you.
Okay. Chris, did you want to talk about the speaker series?
Sure. So I kind of touched on this a little bit previously, but there's sort of two things with the Speakers Bureau, and the fact that we're in COVID-19 has essentially put it into hibernation at this point. I haven't got a single bite from anybody to go out and reach out. But I also usually don't try to schedule speakers over the holidays. When you have Thanksgiving and the Christmas holiday and New Year's holiday and the other holidays that occurred in December, there's usually not a whole lot of interest. They're doing holiday parties at that point versus having speakers come out. So I usually wait until almost March before starting to reach out to customers and the community groups that are local and seeing if there's interest. The other issue is that when there's a big story to tell, there's interest in getting our speakers out. When there was drought, almost every one of the community groups out at Lake San Marcos wanted us to come out and talk about drought. And when desal came online, there was people that wanted us to come out and talk about desal. And just for your clarification, typically what happens is I'll go out and do a speaking engagement and usually invite the board member whose district it's in. Do you want to come along because this one's in your district? Do you want to come with me? And quite often a board member would come along and speak in conjunction with me at those types of events. That's kind of the way it was handled. I don't know if we want to change that. That's just kind of what I inherited when I first came, that it was sort of by district boundaries. But that can be changed, and I can get direction on that. But I'll probably, as COVID winds down, go ahead and start pushing and letting people know that we can have speakers come out. And there's a lot of different topics we'll do. We'll just do a district overview that kind of goes over everything we do. A lot of customers don't understand that we provide wastewater services. That's a real big one. Everybody thinks we do water. Everybody's got that squared away, but they don't know that we do the wastewater. Reliability, sources, water, wastewater, treatment processes. Sometimes water conservation sometimes is a big topic. Desal obviously was a topic. Drought was a topic. But I mean, we can do also landscaping topics and things like that, or state like Bay Delta issues, all kinds of different things.
How do you feel about, I have some friends in other water districts, and occasionally I'll see something that they're doing. How do you feel if I just forward that to you for your consideration, for your thoughts, to think about, to add to the bag of tricks potentially, or, topics?
Send it to me.
Okay.
You know how to get a hold of me. Sure.
Okay. And I would be very interested in attending, any talks that you are planning to give. I know you mentioned the community in the lake. They've got a really tight community, and a lot of folks are interested in water issues there. That happens to be my district also. I would be more than happy to go to, a speaking engagement there, or, really any place. I feel like visibility is part of the mandate of this committee. And this is a tremendous opportunity to spread the word about what we do.
Just as a point of, just so you understand, sometimes the speaking engagement is in a really small room with 8 people in it, but we still go out. So I just want you to know that. I don't want to, quite often, sometimes it'll be at one of the mobile home areas, and they'll have a rec room, and they'll typically provide lunch with it, and those are bigger, and you've got better AV equipment. But sometimes it's just a small little room with just 8 people in it, but we do them.
That's great.
Okay, Chris, virtual tour planning?
So virtual tours, I wasn't sure if we were talking about virtual water academy or virtual tours, and just wanted some clarification on that.
I guess I didn't see them as different, in part because I assumed that the water academy did involve some, the tours of the facility. And I recognize this is a big project, but I thought it doesn't hurt to start talking about it now. The virtual tours, I mentioned that I had attended one for another water district, and I thought that parts of it were well done, and parts of it I thought could be done a little bit differently. But the Water Academy, from what I understand, is really successful here, and it's something that unfortunately we just haven't been able to do because of COVID. But I wanted to think about it not as something to substitute for the in-person Water Academy, but maybe this is another opportunity, for people that are mobility impaired, or, for people that are, just can't make the tours because they run at odd times and they're not able to get off of work. It's just another tool that we could help explain what we do. And I know that it doesn't exist, but I think, beginning to think about it and beginning to talk about it and looking at budgetary constraints, I'm not sure where this would fall as far as the budget in our educational bucket, but I think it's worth starting to talk about and think about.
Well, one of the work we do videos that we want to do is of our Meadowlark reclamation facility. And at some point, we're going to want to submit an award for it. And the really good way to show what Meadowlark does is to provide, essentially what you're talking about is a tour where Alicia will go out and video the staff. And there's kind of about 5 different points in Meadowlark where you kind of explain what happens there. There's the headworks where the wastewater first comes in. There's the actual lab. There's kind of the settling ponds, then some of the treatment and the odor control issues. And then as it gets down and starts turning into reclaimed water, how it's held in contact ponds and so forth, and then pushed back out into the system. And I've talked about it with Dawn, who works out at Meadowlark. And one of the things you try not to do is have the work we do video go too long, because people's attention spans fade out pretty quick. But the other thing too is I think the number of staff that they have there kind of fits nicely with the number of stations. And so it could be really inclusive, letting each staff member get their takes to tell their story about the specific point in the reclamation facility to explain it. And Alicia obviously goes through and cleans up their errors. Ryan, one of our engineers, he talks about, he was on the solar one. I hope you both have seen it, but he talked about, how many mistakes he made, but how, Alicia cleaned them all up. And by the end of the video, he looked like this real knowledgeable, smooth talking guy. And he was just so frustrated with himself because he had to get so many retakes. But I think that's a good one. It's kind of a piece of the Water Academy anyway. We have a video of the Twin Oaks tanks. We don't really have one specifically related to Meadowlark. I sort of worry about it being too long, but it's one of the things that we've talked about and want to do anyway. So your thought jives in really well.
Great. And you've given me some homework. I'm going to go and make sure that I watch all of those videos.
Okay, I think that's all we had for public awareness. And if the committee members are ready, we'll move into policy. And Chris, you're free to leave, and James, if you want to leave too, we'll see you guys later. All right, so policy, the way it's titled is the update on the consolidation of resolutions, ordinances, and practices. So I think you both know we do not have an approved administrative code. An administrative code to me is just kind of the central repository of all of your kind of rules and regulations. That doesn't mean we don't have rules and regulations. They're just not compiled into the centralized document. We have ordinances, we have resolutions. I sent both of you an email this morning about an hour or so before this board meeting or this committee meeting that had a link on there. It'll take you to our website. That'll take you to our ordinances and resolutions. We need to improve it a little bit because it takes you and it gives you a list of ordinances by number, but it doesn't have the name of them. So if you're looking for something, it's pretty hard to find it, right? So we're gonna clean that up. We do have an index. It just hasn't been linked with Laserfish. So it shouldn't take much work for staff to make it a much more user-friendly document, so that any member of the public that wants to search for an ordinance or a resolution, excuse me, could do so much more in a much more user-friendly fashion. So we also have, obviously we have practices. Each group has their own practices. Some of them have been elevated to a policy document. So we're in this process of trying to figure out how to get our arms around all this and bring it into what we could call an administrative code. I'm working with Ann and Diane on that. And about a year ago, we started this process and COVID really interfered with it. But we got a pretty good head start, or pretty good start on it. What we did is we looked at some of the other outside agencies that do have adopted admin codes. And we looked at which ones we thought would be a good model, good template for us. Collectively, we agreed that the Padre Dam Municipal Water District has a good admin code structure that we liked. So with that, we got a copy of their code. And what we're trying to do right now, right when we kind of aborted our process, I think it was back in April when we kind of discontinued work on it, we were doing what I call a mapping exercise. We looked at the like table of contents, for lack of a better term, in the Padre Dam code. We looked to see, do all of those make sense for our organization? And not everything does. Padre Dam, they have their own recreation program. They have these lakes that you can go camping at. Well, we don't have anything like that. So if they had sections about camping and park rangers, we didn't need that, right? So we're going to strike all that out. Of what remained that we thought was useful, we tried to look and say, see, did we have similar content for each of those chapter headings, for lack of a better term? And this, and let me share my screen real quick, and I can show you what we've come up with to date. Oh crap, I may have closed it. Yeah, I think I closed it. And if you can bring up that shared document, you have an ability, and then you can share it. But anyway, went through this mapping exercise. We were trying to identify by the Padre Dam kind of structure. By the way, Padre Dam didn't create theirs out of whole cloth. They borrowed their structure from somebody else who probably borrowed it. It's probably been passed along for generations. So we're just building on successes of other organizations. So this mapping exercise was to try to identify what do we already have that can easily be incorporated into the structure of an admin code. So we've gotten pretty far on that. So it's basically a table that shows, hey, for this section in the Padre Dam admin code, we have this ordinance or this resolution, or maybe it's in our employee handbook, or maybe it's in a policy manual somewhere. So we're just trying to figure out what do we already have. And once we do that, that'll tell us the flip side, which is what don't we already have. So this is, thank you, Ann. So if you look at this on the far left is the Padre Dam section heading, and I hope you can all see this, right? Okay, so it has a section code number, and then it has the title of PD stands for Padre Dam. So the second column heading is title of Padre Dam section number, and then is the Padre Dam section applicable to us? So my example, if it was a camping facilities, we would have said no in that column. Most things are yes. And then the real important was that fourth column, is there a similar Vallecitos Water District document type? So for example, on the top line, 15.1, public records policy. Do we have a similar document type? Yes, we have a resolution that addresses this. So that's a good starting point. So instead of having resolutions in one basket and ordinances somewhere else and policy somewhere else, our goal is to bring this all into an admin code. And we're trying to figure out the magnitude of the work required. Where we already have an existing document, that's a great starting point, right? You can kind of, and I'll overly simplify this, but you can kind of cut and paste it from one document and drag it into an admin code. Now, clearly, as part of that, we're going to want to review the current wording. Is it up to date? Does it still make sense? Some of these ordinances are 40, 50 years old. Some of those older ones have been replaced by newer ones, right? So that's important. So don't even pay attention to the old ones, look at the new ones. But even the new ones, there's been a passage of time. So we want to look at those. So that's where we find ourselves. We're in this process of determining what we already have and then finding a way to incorporate that into the admin code. And for the things that we think we need that we don't have, so for example, things that say no in that fourth column, like the second one, item line 15.2, definitions. No, we don't have a similar document. So we'd have to develop a list of definitions to include in the admin code. So all of those no's are going to be significantly higher workload than a yes. A yes is hopefully as simple as cutting and pasting and maybe reviewing. It could be tweaking and modifying. It's not going to all be done by myself, Diane, and Ann. If it's a finance document, we're going to have to involve the finance folks. They may have finance policy documents that are better source documents to match up with Padre Dam structure than what we may already have. So it's a pretty extensive effort. It's never been the highest priority. So the day-to-day operations of the district have always taken the highest priority. So getting ready for board meetings, doing the minutes, preparing travel and training documents, and all the billing, all that day-to-day stuff consumes most of our time. So I've asked Diane and Ann, pre-COVID, when you had time, start working on this. In the post-COVID, it's just been a lot more difficult to coordinate. So, but we're prepared as we start to reintroduce people back to the workplace. I think we'll start focusing more on this, and we can start being more proactive in going through these things. But so I don't want the committee members to leave thinking, oh, we don't have an admin code, we don't have any rules. We got plenty of rules and guidance out there. It's just not in a one-stop shopping place, which is kind of what I see the admin code be. So with that, I'll turn it over to the committee members to see if you're okay with the general approach. And obviously, Diane or Ann, if you wanted to add anything I may have left out, feel free to do that as well. And we don't have a timeline right now. I think within, hopefully by the end of this fiscal year, we can have a basic structure where we can put together this admin code, the bones of it, included language we already have, maybe start working on the language we don't have, and have a better idea of a timeline of when we think it could be done. But I can tell you with certainty that by June 30th, it's not going to be a completed document. I know that. Hopefully by December 31st, that may be more realistic to say we can have our first draft admin code completed by the end of this calendar year. I think that's a reasonable target. So with that, I'll take a pause and turn it over to the two directors.
No, I mean, thank you for that explanation. I understand exactly what you're doing, and it's on your radar. I always live by a code that says prioritize, communicate, and delegate. And so I know it's not high on the priority list. So when, you've just got to, as long as that communication is open and we understand what's going on, and then we delegate those things that we need to get done, and then eventually it'll get done. But no, I'm pleased with everything you're doing. And it's interesting how you use Padre. Is there a reason you use Padre Dam as opposed to any other district or anything?
I know the GM there pretty well. I'm pretty familiar with their organization. I've looked at their structure and their documents before. They seem to do a really high quality job. I looked at a few others online, and just, in full disclosure, I probably looked at 4 or 5. It's not like I did every water district in San Diego County, but I just got a sense, a comfort level with the Padre Dam structure, and with my experience in working with them on other projects. I said that's a good enough start. I did notice a lot of similarity with the numbering structure. So I think a lot of these districts have gone to a similar source. And obviously the language they put in that source is different from agency to agency, but the overall structure and layout, I don't know where it came from, but yeah, overall, I think it was a good starting point. And one thing, before Director Boyd Hodgson speaks, one thing that may be more beneficial is if there's particular areas of interest that the directors have, either at the board level or the committee level, to say, hey, what's our policy on X or Y? We can focus on those without worrying about incorporating it into the admin code. Because first and foremost, we want to make sure that there's rules in place. It's not as important to me where they're stored and what the name of the book is, but if an issue is raised, it's our rules, right? We want to make sure that we know how to handle something in a fair, equitable, and repeatable manner, so that if you have 4 different technicians, they're not handling things 4 different ways. So you want some consistency. And I think from that perspective, we're pretty good. We could probably do better with the documentation. So for some, there's practices. I'll pick on development services. So Rob Scholl, he's gone now, but he was the leader of development services. So he oversaw numerous people that did similar jobs. So he would verbally tell them things, and I think they would carry out those instructions. But I don't personally know whether all of that was well documented. It might have been, and I'm just not aware of it. But that's the important thing, to make sure those practices can kind of become policies for direction for not just the people that are working here today, but for the next generation you can use as a training tool. And then we can worry about how does it get placed into an admin code, if that's even the right repository for it. So with that, I'm being long-winded. Director Boyd Hodgson, did you have any particular thoughts?
No, thank you, Glenn. It's good stuff.
All right, thank you.
I think this is a great start, and I'm really impressed that you've pulled together so much already. And thank you for looking to another agency and not trying to reinvent the wheel. There is no need to do that. So, these exist across a variety of different agencies. And, I'm grateful that you found one that felt like a good fit. So thank you for that. I think it's important to be flexible so that as you're, as you go through and you see that there are holes, like for example, I see that there's no similar VWD document type for conclusion. I think it's important that we enable ourselves to be flexible so that we don't feel like we have to fill every single hole if it doesn't make sense. And that'll also reduce the workload. So I'm saying that out loud to you so that you know that I'm flexible in that way too. I think we should do what makes sense. And my sort of broad vision or picture for this was to bring it all together and make it easy to find for people to look at, and to also, this is a best practice of board governance as well as districts. So having this is one more thing that we can point to say, that elevates us. But I think it is important to be flexible. If there's a hole, we may not need to fill every hole, and I fully recognize that, especially if it's creating a lot of work. And that might change. Maybe it's not necessary to fill it right now, but maybe later on down the road, somebody may find a need for it and we can address it at that time. So I appreciate all of this. As far as your question about concentrating in certain areas, I'm not prepared to answer that right here in this meeting, but I will, if this document right here that you've compiled so far could be shared with us, then I'm happy to go through there and say, here's what I would like to learn more about, or here's what I think would be most helpful for me right now. And I can commit to looking through that and providing some guidance if that's helpful.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. We can share this document with the two of you. And if there's areas of particular interest, let us know. And then maybe on future items or future meetings, we can come back and give an update or maybe ask for clarity or have a discussion about those particular items.
Sure. And I think that, by the end of the year, having a first draft is, if that's reasonable, I think that that's a great goal. And let's be flexible about that and keep revisiting it. But, for now, I think that sounds like a great goal. If that's, you said that you think that's reasonable. So let's work towards that.
Okay. And further answer to Director Penix, why do we, or maybe it was Director Boyd Hodgson, about why did we pick Padre Dam? Another benefit of Padre Dam is that they use the same attorneys. They use Best and Krieger. So this is clearly a document that's going to require extensive legal review. Staff will take the first shot and then we'll run it by legal. And I like to think that their comfort with Best and Krieger's comfort with the Padre Dam schedule will facilitate the review of our document as we move forward. Okay. Any other questions on item 3? Okay. So item 4 is just if we're ready to move on, this is something I asked to be added to the agenda, and thank you for including it, Director Boyd Hodgson. It's just titled Discussion Regarding Level of Detail Required for Potential Future Items, and it's kind of a generic title. So here's what I mean. Sometimes something may come to staff's attention that we think may be worthy of consideration, but we don't want to go spend a lot of time and effort and money to get it kind of fully vetted. And maybe the board's not interested, or maybe the committee's not interested in it. So I'd like to think that there's an ability at this level for staff to put items on here that we could just have an open discussion. And I want the committee members to know that we may not have done a lot of research on it. And I've got an example for you, so it may be helpful. So we may be bringing an item forward to you that isn't well vetted, which we don't normally like to do. We like to, normally, if we prepare the agenda, it's about an item we're prepared to talk about, and we'll have slides and graphics and, PowerPoint slides and all that. And in this context of this item 4, I won't. So here's the example. So I've had a couple of customers reach out. They're water customers of ours, but they're not wastewater customers. They're on septic. They want to connect to our sewer system, but in doing their own research, they realize it's very expensive. So they may have to annex into the district. They'd have to pay our capacity facility fees. They'd have to pay for the construction. It could be $40,000 by the time you connect to the sewer. So these two separate parties both asked, does the district have a program to help financially assist people that want to hook up? And the answer is no, we don't. So that's the answer I gave them. We don't have that. But it gets me thinking, should we? obviously, let's set money aside for a while. It's in the environment's best interest to get people off of septic. The septic systems can fail. They can leach out into adjacent water bodies. There's a lot of problems associated. So I have a high degree of confidence in our ability to manage the wastewater collection system. If I could get everybody to get off of septic and get down to the sewer, I think that would be great. And then we're heading that direction, but we're not there yet. But the big hurdle is going to be the financial hurdle. All these people that would like to do it and can't because it's too expensive. So, and I'm not advocating it by bringing this up to your attention as an example only. I'm not advocating that we develop a policy to do that. But these are the types of things that I'd like to be able to bring forward to the committee to say, what do you think? Is this something we should bring to the board? Are you all interested in this? And it's two direction, right? If either of you have an idea of, hey, this is something I think we should consider, this, maybe it's a standing item. Are there additional policy things that we want to consider? But I find as GM, I often have these ideas that are like, well, I don't want to go spend 4 months of time and involve a lot of staff and spend a lot of money and bringing it forward and find out that no one really supports it. None of the board members really support it. So put the example aside for a while. Are the committee members interested in having that kind of flexibility where staff might bring items forward to you that aren't not even half baked, they're just partially baked? Or if your expectation is that it be a fully baked item, then we'll probably be less inclined to bring things forward because it is a considerable workload. So with that, I'll turn it over to you to see what thoughts you both may have.
So I love hearing ideas. I love creativity around folks thinking outside the box about how to do their jobs better or how to make Vallecitos better. I'm happy to hear ideas. I feel like that there are some, and it's not all or nothing, right? It could be, here's an idea that we have, and maybe here are the 3 things we know about it. We can guess sort of how much it's going to cost. And we can guess, how, have we ever done anything like this before? Or is there somebody that we can look to that has, so that we have a reasonable idea of what the logistics will look like? I think, bare minimum amount of information just to communicate what it is and what you would be asking would be important. But, just for, when you sent out the email saying, I'd like to add this to the agenda, I thought, oh, I really wish I had an example because I didn't really know what you were going to talk about. But, I'm always interested in hearing ideas. And I don't think that it's the purview of me as the chair to shut ideas down. I think having ideas makes it a better committee and makes the district better. So I am willing to hear ideas, but there has to be like a little bit of substance just to understand, what it is that you're asking. And in particular, with this particular example, I would like to hear more about this. I heard from many people on the campaign trail, not many, but a handful of people on the campaign trail. This is an issue that is really important to them and they're highly frustrated about it. So I would love to talk about this more and figure out, I would like to better understand it, first of all, and then talk about it more and see if we can help solve this problem for people that, that want to work with us. So that's my answer to the specific example and any examples going forward.
Okay. Director Pennick, any thoughts on that?
No, and I appreciate Director Boyd Hodgson's remarks. I agree. I love ideas, love talking about it. Specific to this one, just to help us, I mean, like you're saying, all kinds of ideas, but on this one, you're saying it's $40,000 roughly for somebody to convert from septic to sewer?
Yeah, that's really rough.
Fair to say?
I mean, our capacity facility fee is about 13,000. So then that doesn't even include construction and design and all that.
Okay. And so the end user, what are they spending on a monthly basis for wastewater?
If they're on septic? Is that what you mean? Oh, probably.
No, if they're not on septic.
Oh.
No, if they're converted to a customer of ours.
Oh, if they're converted to a customer of ours, it's like $39 a month. So they're about $500 a year, roughly.
How much? I missed that. I'm sorry.
So if for our people that are connected to our wastewater system, it
Yes.
costs them a little less than $500 a year they pay to us.
Okay.
So the comparison is, what does it cost them to stay on septic? Not many people get on sewer to save money. It's more expensive to join the local system. The municipal wastewater system is probably more expensive, but it gets rid of a lot of the problems associated with septic. Like if you have a failing septic system, you may have almost no costs, maybe an annual pump out for years, and then all of a sudden you've got a $40,000, you got to replace your septic system.
Repair bill.
Yeah, big repair replacement cost.
Right. Okay.
But see, that's the amount of work. Normally, if we were
And I see the huge.
if we were taking something forward to the board for a recommendation, that's the work we'd be doing. What does it cost? What are the actual dollars to connect? What is the cost of the annual replacement of a septic? What are monthly service charges? We would do all that work, but normally if the committee's not interested in bringing an item forward to the board, I'll just say, let's have a high level discussion. If that's not where you want to focus our efforts, then we'll maybe put it on the shelf for a while. And if you are interested, I'll try to give you an idea of how much staff time and money would be involved in coming up with a higher level of a better understanding of the costs. Like I said, the example I gave is good because it's a real example, but it's
Gotcha.
bad because I don't really have a recommendation. I'm not suggesting that we go out and do that because it's a very expensive program. And if the new customers aren't connecting, there's a fairness issue. The people that connected in the past, they'll say, hey, why didn't I get subsidized or, pick up half the cost? So there's a lot of big policy issues associated with that. And that's one of the things this committee does. If we were going to go in a particular direction, we'd want to look and say, what are the policy issues associated with it? But again, don't focus too much on the example. I just want to know, is it okay? And I'm hearing, yes, it's okay to bring items forward that are partially baked.
No, right.
If it resonates with you, then maybe we'll go back and do a little bit more work and bring it back more fully baked, maybe on the way to the board. So that's all I wanted out of here, a general feel.
Yeah, no, it resonates, and I agree. I mean, yeah, I never want to shut down shut down an idea, but yes, definitely resonates. And I understand the environmental impacts as well, because as far as that specific example. So yes.
Okay. Good. Well, that's all I had for item 4. So I don't know if there's anything more, Director Boyd Hodgson. I don't know if I cut you off there or not. But.
I think it's important for you, General Manager Proem, and for your staff to feel invested in the work that you do in order to derive job satisfaction. And part of that is, the ability and the latitude to be creative and to bring ideas forward. And the last thing I want to do is contribute negatively to that. So I welcome ideas, and I think Director Pennick and I are on the same page about that. So yeah, bring them forward, and let's have a conversation, and let's figure out a way to solve some problems together. So I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Agreed. Just my experience. I've had experience with the county trying to do development. When I go down there, it seems like they have a, what can we do to put a roadblock in front of you attitude. And I'd like to have an attitude of, how can we help you? Let's explore ideas and how can we help and make it work instead of how can we put roadblocks and make it not work.
Yeah, that's kind of our philosophy too. And I know the single biggest roadblock is the money to people. You can help them all day long with the process, but once you ask them to write the check, that's viewed as a big barrier. And that's reality, right? For all of us, money's a reality. So, okay.
Do we finance anybody on anything? Question on that though. Do we finance anybody?
No, well, we try not to be. We try not to be a bank, right? So, but I think you're going to find that we're going to get more into that business because of COVID. And there's a lot of people statewide that are behind on the water bills. No, we're no exception. We have people, our numbers, our overdue bills are probably 4 to 5 times what they were pre-COVID. So these people, just because a vaccine's out there and maybe they get their job back, it may help some people, but others were living paycheck to paycheck even before COVID. And now they've got let's say $1,000 water bill. So I think we're going to have to find a way to work with those folks over a period of time. And that doesn't mean forgive the debt, but that also doesn't mean we're going to shut you off next month if you don't pay your debt. So I think this committee will be very involved, or could be very involved if you want to be, to try to figure out what programs could or should we offer these people. So first of all, who's eligible? You know, if it's somebody who's very wealthy, maybe they shouldn't be eligible, or are we blind to the people's ability to pay? So those are the policy issues we probably need to figure out. But a short answer to your direct question, Director Pennick, is we try not to get in the business of being a bank and lending money. But I think there are some reasonable areas where we may want to be able to help people finance things if we have a reason to believe we'll get that money back eventually. And maybe we're charging interest, so it's not a gift. We're getting it back. And maybe that example I gave is maybe we don't pay for half of the sewer connection fee, but we let them finance half of it. And over time, it becomes a deed or some kind of a lien against their property, and you get 5 years to pay it back. And at the end of 5 years, they're in good standing. So, but that's the type of stuff that we deal with as a staff level all the time. But I think the committee could help us figure out how to fine tune it before it gets its day in court at the board. So, but this discussion was helpful for me because it sounds like you're both very willing to listen to things that are in the rudimentary stages of development, maybe help drive the direction it ultimately goes on its way to the board, fully understanding that the committee can't approve things, but having the committee's recommendation as it goes to the board could be very powerful.
Sure.
Okay, that's all I had. So I guess the next item is the next meeting date, and that's probably not a lot of discussion. March 1st still work for both of you?
I'm good with that.
And Ann or Diane, did we plot out the dates for the whole year? I know we did for the engineering committee. I can't remember if we did for the P3 committee or not. Okay, I don't think we did yet, but I think we were shooting for the first Monday of every month. Is that right? Okay, let's plan on that. We'll send out those confirmed dates. First Monday of every month, 10 o'clock. The only exception may be like September. Labor Day is usually the first Monday. So we can either make it a different Monday or shift it back a day to Tuesday. We'll figure that out. But in general, save the date for the first Monday of each month. And we'll send out a recommended calendar.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's it.
All right.
Anything else?
Not
Okay.
for me.
Thank you
We
all.
are adjourned.
All right. Thank you.